On February 3rd, 2025, a right-winger was killed by the police. 2 months before his death, on December 2nd, Farmer Riggs, whose real name was Steve, posted this on his Twitter account. I wish I was the pregnant one in my relationship. If I could literally just swap bodies with my wife and bring time back 7 months when we just started to find out, I'm telling you, I would sacrifice this amazing epic life I have just to make sure my womb was the most fertile ever. While I don't have much to say about this post right now, I will be coming back to it. 3 days later, on December 5th, Steve posted this. Can't wait to meet my daughter, Rand. My pregnant wife is beautiful. God bless you, wife. Below these words are an image of Steve's pregnant wife with 3 captions. Dime piece about to make a dime piece. The countdown getting real. 14 heart emojis. So pumped to chill with my pretty girls all day and watch movies. On December 5th, Steve also posted, Society has collapsed. Judges defend illegal immigrants and transgenders over veterans and Christians. Not for long. Righteousness is the way of us Rastas. Rastafari. Christ is Lord. Bless Clarence Thomas. The caption on the photo he posted with this tweet said, Imagine going to Dunks every day on E in your truck and a transgender hands you raw bacon every single day on the meal you paid your last dime for. From these 2 statements, we could derive some information about Steve's character. He believed society is collapsing, or has already collapsed, and that the people responsible for this collapse are immigrants and transgender people. He is Christian. He believed, probably because he smoked a lot of pot, that he was Rastafarian. According to Britannica.com, Rastas, as members of the movement are called, see their past, present, and future in a distinct way. Drawing from Old Testament stories, especially the Israelites' enslavement in Exodus and their exile from Palestine in the Babylonian captivity, Rastas overstand, rather than understand, people of African descent in the Americas and around the world to be exiles in Babylon. They believe that they are being tested by Jah through slavery and the existence of economic injustice and racial downpression rather than oppression. While I don't know what Steve felt in his heart, I feel confident in saying this was not an earnest religious declaration. The ideas and tenets behind Rastafarianism seem pretty woke for someone who hates illegal immigrants. Then again, the ideas regarding immigrants in the Bible are pretty woke too, and I don't think that means he isn't a Christian. I don't know why he specifically calls out Clarence Thomas following the Rastafari comment. Maybe because Clarence Thomas is one of the Supreme Court justices responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, and as we will see shortly, Steve was not fond of abortion. The second statement is a little harder to parse. Imagine going to Dunks every day on E in your truck and a transgender hands you raw bacon every single day on the meal you paid your last dime for. I think Steve was trying to communicate with us a thought experiment. Imagine, if you will, going into Dunkin' Donuts with your truck's gas tank on E. Then, when you spend your last dime on a meal, a transgender person gives you a strip of raw bacon. This is the transphobia zone. I really have no idea what this is supposed to convey, other than the fact that Steve created fantasies in his head about the people he hates affecting his daily life. I don't think this has ever happened to him, mostly because I'm positive he would have walked out of any restaurant that presented him with a noticeably trans waitstaff, but also because the hypothetical lacks interconnectedness. The transgender in this hypothetical didn't siphon the gas from your vehicle, nor were they the person who cooked your food, nor are they the one in charge of your finances. They're just there, existing without context in a hypothetical space filled to the brim with hate and poor grammar. Their mere existence is enough to become the worst part of the story. The fact that you're broke bothering you? Well, this trans person was there, and that's even worse. On December 11th, 2024, Steve made this post on his social media account. She claims to be a doctor and gives birth to people, but she also provides abortions. Yeah, stay away from my baby and wife there, chubby Lauren. With this statement, he posted an image, which appears to be clipped from an article. Lauren Walker, a certified nurse midwife from Northern Light AR Gold Hospital, says a midwife can do a variety of things. We do a lot of office visits too. We do birth control. We do annual well women exams. We do STD testing. If you have women's health concerns, you can see us about any of that stuff too. On the same day, he also posted, No chance am I letting the weird witch doctor remove the baby from my wife's womb. God will decide when my baby is to be born, not some weirdo with tattoos, a nose ring, and crystal copper jewelry that calls herself a doctor. I told her she was unqualified to her face. Here we gather a bit more information about Steve's outlooks. He is rather judgmental of the appearances of women, especially women who are in a position of authority. He calls this woman fat and also a witch doctor because she has piercings and tattoos. He appears to be rather comfortable doing what is clearly some type of light harassment. Of course, while Steve is entitled to his opinion, this type of naming and shaming of abortion providing medical professionals has proved rather dangerous in the past, even leading to assassination. Most people would see this as a rather innocuous description of a midwife, but in Steve's mind, this is a deceptive red herring, hiding the true intent of his midwife to provide abortions. While Steve claims she is a doctor, it clearly says in the screenshot that she is a certified nurse midwife. Steve's capability of calling this woman unqualified to her face shows a level of male ego and anti-intellectualism that is all too common on the right. According to midwifeschooling.com, to be a certified nurse midwife in Maine, you need a master's degree in nursing with a focus on midwifery, certainly enough to consider her qualified to birth a child. On December 14th, 2024, Farmer Riggs made these 4 posts. Post 1. Reason why hard drugs need to be very illegal to the point of death penalty is because drugs are an act of terrorism. Drugs are made by terrorists and the worst people ever. Every time someone does line, technically, they complicit in murdering. Post 2. Life in prison with possibility of death penalty for any amount over 3.5 grams dealing heroin, meth, coke, crack, ecstasy, ketamine, molly, and other deadly hard drugs. Anyone caught with hard drugs should be no less than 5 years prison, even for very small amounts. Post 3. I'm actually so pissed. This country needs to be more Amish, and the women need to start dressing way more modestly in general. Porn needs to be made illegal. Trans kids needs to stop. Public displays of LGBT whatever TF should also be illegal. Post 4. My anger is unreal right now at how disgusting our society has become. Bunch of degenerate, pedophile, drug-dealing scumbags. I am not backing down. I'm seriously at the point where I can legally justify any actions to protect myself and future daughter. Don't try me on the law. Whether or not the person saying these talking points is undoubtedly manic, these are still alarmingly common beliefs held by today's conservatives. So let's confront these ideas point by point. Counterpoint 1. Drugs are not an act of terrorism. The definition of terrorism, according to Merriam-Webster, is the systematic use of terror, especially as a means of coercion. There are many definitions of terrorism, but an inanimate object, such as a drug, isn't capable of coercion. Terrorists may use different tools to create terror, but that doesn't intrinsically mean any tool used by terrorists is itself an act of terrorism. Terrorists use guns, but a conservative like Steve wouldn't call a gun by itself an act of terrorism. Counterpoint 2. Drugs aren't made by terrorists. Again, just like guns are manufactured in factories, drugs are manufactured in labs by scientists and chemists and even poor laborers. Terrorists may use the sale of drugs to fund their efforts, like how the CIA possibly allowed the sale of cocaine by the Contras to fund their anti-socialist war against the Sandinistas. Counterpoint 3. You are complicit in murder when you do a line, just like you are complicit in slavery when you use your phone, or complicit in the destruction of the environment by driving your car. Many of us are trapped in systems that create harm, but that is a matter of changing the system, not policing each individual person's behavior. The average nobody doesn't have the power to make whatever industries they take part in be more ethical. This is the responsibility of people with power, people in government and high positions in companies, and as their constituents and customers, you have to demand changes from them. Drugs aren't going away, but we can demand a more ethical system for drug production and trade. Imprisoning people doesn't solve the problem, neither does executing people. Counterpoint 3.5. Likewise, the use of illicit street drugs is partially a byproduct of wealth inequality. For example, many heroin users resort to the drug due to their prescription pain medication either becoming too expensive or after being denied pain medication for suspected drug abuse and drug-seeking behaviors. Disabilities or disorders such as chronic pain, depression, and anxiety can trigger drug use, especially if the person doesn't have access to pathways for legal drugs. I will also point out that cannabis is a drug, and people like Steve choose to arbitrarily recognize drugs they don't use as hard drugs, which are only used by bad people. Not long ago, cannabis was a highly illicit substance, and it still is in many parts of the country. Alcohol was an illicit substance during Prohibition, which we all know is working out really well for everybody, and currently kills over 170,000 people per year, while scary heroin kills a little over 5,000 people per year. Ketamine isn't even an illegal street drug. Putting people in prison because you arbitrarily assert that the drug they use is a violent crime, while the drugs you use are fine, is not only harmful to society, it is deeply hypocritical. Counterpoint 4. The Amish, while they respect each person's right to believe whatever faith they wish, are not a good model for society, especially for women. In an article titled Child Sexual Abuse in the Amish Community, A Hidden Epidemic, the author Kate Sullivan describes the sexually oppressive atmosphere of the Amish community. In the article, the author describes a full courtroom of Amish community members crying over the conviction of 3 young men, one of which admitted to assaulting his sister hundreds of times. He was sentenced to nights in jail and community service. In 2020, 2 young men were convicted of assaulting their 12-year-old sister and served no prison time. Is this the society you want? One where a drug you choose to do lands you in prison, while the people who assault children go free? Counterpoint 5. Porn is a free speech issue. Don't conservatives love free speech? Or does free speech only count when it lets you use slurs and lie on the news without legal repercussions? Counterpoint 6. What is a trans kid exactly? When prepubescent children want to identify as the opposite gender, the only option is social transition, which is wearing clothes that align with and identifying as the opposite gender. This is also a free speech issue. You can't tell me how to dress my kid. I can wear whatever I want, and so can my child. The government stepping in to moderate dress is anti-free speech and authoritarian. When a preteen with gender dysphoria is about to begin puberty, they are given the option to delay it with puberty blockers. This delays puberty temporarily until the teen either chooses to remain as their birth gender, in which case they stop medication and undergo puberty, or the teen decides to move on with transition, in which case they will do hormone replacement therapy. There is no transition surgery available to people this age. When a female teenager transitions after already growing breasts, they can often opt for breast reduction surgery. This is always after the state's age of medical consent. This is also a surgery undertaken by cis teen girls who develop health problems from oversized breast growth. Fundamental Christians are against defying God's will. One of the problems with this is that they are inconsistent and apply their personal preferences as the Word of God. This is why Christianity has no place in government. Counterpoint 7. Public displays of LGBT, whatever that means, is also a free speech issue. Men have the right to kiss other men, even in public. Women have the right to kiss other women. Trans people have the right to exist. Non-binary people have the right to dress outside of gender norms. I have the right to hang a pride flag on my lawn just as much as my crazy neighbor has a right to fly a Trump flag on his. There is no counterpoint for the last post because it is an expression of personal feelings, but I will read it again as it is very important for the point I'm making. My anger is unreal right now at how disgusting our society has become. Bunch of degenerate, pedophile, drug-dealing scumbags. I'm not backing down. I'm seriously at the point where I can legally justify any actions to protect myself and future daughter. Don't try me on the law. At this point, you may be asking why it appears like I am debating a mentally ill dead man. Of course I am, but not without good reason. I just think that due to the highly political, far-right nature of these posts, it would be irresponsible if I didn't at least provide a counter-narrative along the way. Also this. On December 19th, 2024, Farmer Riggs posted, "All of my posts are for documentation purposes. I know a cyber footprint can never be erased. This will all be proof of how much I care about the betterment of mankind and the health and well-being of the next generation. Sad people don't do the same, but they are cowards." Since then, Steve's cyber footprint has been erased. For all I know, I'm the only person who took record of his last day of posting. On November 1st, 2025, Farmer Riggs posted this: "The only cannabis company that is for we the people. Truly the only brand that doesn't make us conservative stoners feel inferior. The only weed brand I will ever support. God bless this company." Below is an image of a product called Donald Trump Seeds. The top of the packaging says, "Trump made seeds legal." Steve's profile description claims he is a co-founder in this company. He grows cannabis at his farm. In other words, a drug dealer and manufacturer. Fun fact, cannabis was legalized in Maine on November 8th, 2016. Then the Republican governor of Maine vetoed the law, only for the state legislature to overturn his veto 2 years later, finally allowing the first cannabis shops to open in 2019. In short, the Republicans are the forefront of the anti-cannabis movement. Before we get into the next part, I want to preface. I empathize deeply with Steve. I know what it feels like to be a new father. I know how difficult it is to take care of a newborn. The hardest time of my life was then. I behaved very poorly, often neglecting my partner and choosing to self-soothe in isolation. Through a lot of difficult self-reflection, I became determined to make changes to myself to better represent who I wanted to be and to treat others in my life how they wanted to be treated. To me, it was scary to think that if I had refused to change, I wouldn't have the beautiful family that I have today. I wasn't as ideological back then. I was willing to consider how I was going to live my life, and to a large extent, that saved me. On February 3rd, 2025, Farmer Riggs posted, "I'm sorry for the man who got shot, but don't try to take people's daughter from them." He then posted, "They tried to take my daughter from me. Sheriff wanted to feel her. They would not leave and sabotaged me and still tried to take my daughter. It's honestly such a shame. Any real man would never let the government take their daughter." Then, "What would you do if someone tried to take your daughter? What would you do? Would you let them take her? Or would you fight with every ounce in you to keep her with her rightful father? What would you do?" Then, "If they did not try to take my newborn daughter, none of this would have happened." Then, "Remember me as someone who loves my country, loves the Bible, and loves my daughter. Remember me as a man who fought for the unborn babies with all my might." He then Googled the number of abortions in Maine, screenshotted the AI overview, then posted that, saying, "This is why I must fight for the ones who never got a chance. They tried to take my daughter. I had no other option. Years of transgenders harassing me, and abortion being essentially a sacrament in my state. I have to stand my ground and fight for my religion here. Christ is Lord. I am sorry. They tried taking my baby, and I had to defend her. I had to do this. They are enemies of my faith. They kill babies in the womb in my state up to late term. I had to do this. I had to stick up for myself. I cannot let them take me, for they didn't protect the most innocent, and it was them or it was me. Christ is Lord. Please forgive me." Then Steve made his final post, writing, "I had to do this for the unborn babies. I had to do this because it was either them or me. God bless. To my loved ones, I am sorry, but I must do what is right in my heart. If the police protect the abortion clinics up to late term, then they are enemies of my faith." With this, he posted a video.
I'm here. My name is Stephen Regini. I am a resident of Maine, and I had the cops called on me. A SWAT team showed up, and I am now engaged in a shootout. My state has been the #1 abortion and gay rights state in the entire country, and I've been segregated against for my beliefs. Now they're trying to arrest me simply because I do not believe in gay rights and abortion, which is the #1 state of Maine right now. That's what they do. They're an abortion mill. So I'm here. I'm in a shootout with the authorities who are protecting the rights of doctors to murder babies, and they are protecting the rights of children to be ripped out of the womb and killed. I'm here with my baby daughter, who they're also trying to take away, and I assure you that I am not the aggressor here. They tried to arrest me, they tried to tase me, they're trying to make me a criminal. They are trying to get me in trouble. They are trying to take me to jail for a long time for getting in an argument with my wife, which was a simple argument. I've spoke with her since. I love my wife. I love my daughter. I'm so grateful for all God has blessed me with. I'm grateful for my farm. I'm grateful for everything, all my friends and people who love me. And I'm sorry this had to happen. I really am, but I'm backed into a corner with my political beliefs. I haven't been able to find a job in a year, and my entire life has been just struggling for existence, fighting Democrats and trying to stand up for my country. Let me ask you, if you're a law enforcement officer, why do you support the COVID vaccines? Why do you support abortion? Why do you support what isn't morally right? How are you fighting for a state system that protects illegal immigrants and pedophiles. Please explain this to me. Please explain to me why abortion is still legal in my state. Why are the babies dying? Why? Why is this illegal up till the time of conception? That's why I'm fighting. I'm fighting for the babies, I'm fighting for the unborn, and I'm fighting for righteousness and Christianity to be restored in this country. Christ is Lord, God bless, and I'm sorry to you, my parents. I love you, my parents. I love you, my wife. I love you, my daughter. I love you, all my beloved friends and business partners, and God bless you. I'm sorry it had to end this way.
These are Steve's final words. So many things can be said about this moment, but let's try to work out these claims before I say my final thoughts. Unsurprisingly, Maine is not the number one state for abortions. That would either be California, which has the highest number of abortions, or Florida, which currently has the highest abortion rate. Of course, this fluctuates, but year over year, Maine is firmly in the middle. I'm not exactly sure what the number one gay rights state even means. The first gay marriage happened in California. The first state to legalize gay marriage was Massachusetts. Before 2012, 6 states had legalized gay marriage. In that November, Maine was one of 3 states to become the first to legalize gay marriage through popular vote via referendum, so Maine is number 7 tops. Just to clarify for a moment, I believe when Steve says conception, he means birth, and when he says segregated, he means discriminated. Otherwise, this makes significantly less sense. The police do not overwhelmingly support the COVID vaccine. In fact, they are more hesitant than the average person. In 2020, a survey showed that only 38% of police questioned said that they would take the vaccine, while the general public was around 60%. Abortion is a sensitive medical topic. It saves women's lives because pregnancy can be very dangerous, and having children at a young age traps women in poverty. 15% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, which is mechanically indiscernible from an induced abortion. This has led to women being put in jail over miscarriages they had absolutely no control over. Abortion exceptions for rape and incest don't work either, because the time it would take to prove rape or incest would risk the forced pregnancy and birth of an unwanted child. It can take years to resolve a sexual assault case. Many child survivors of rape don't report their assaults or even understand they were assaulted until adulthood. You are expecting a literal child to prove her own rape. 1% of abortions are late term, which is after 21 weeks, but also late term is not medical terminology. It is fundamentalist Christian propaganda. Women get late abortions for good reasons, like not being able to afford one earlier, or because fetal anomalies are scanned for at 20 weeks of pregnancy, and sometimes these are fatal. There are many health issues that can arise later in pregnancy, which are not necessarily life-threatening, which means exceptions for the life of the mother don't apply. Fundamentalist Christians believe God should decide whether your mother, or your sister, or your daughter is sick or poor, or whether she lives or dies. Nobody else. This is why Christianity has no place in medicine. Steve was a scared man. He was scared of pedophiles, abortions, drugs, porn, gay rights, women, and doctors. He believed that the transgender community was harassing him. He believed that the police personally threatened to molest his child. Steve lived in an alternate reality. Nothing he thought to be true was true, and very often the truth was the exact opposite of what he believed. He accused the LGBT community of being pedophiles, when pedophilia is much more prolific in highly religious communities like the Mormons, whom he idolized. He accused doctors of murder because they perform abortions, when those doctors in reality perform abortions to save lives. He thought he lived in the gayest state, when his state was only the 7th gayest state. He was against the COVID vaccine, even though the vaccine has saved millions of lives worldwide. Steve thought he was a libertarian, yet he hated free speech and free expression when it was exercised by people he hated. He claimed that he was discriminated against for his beliefs, when his biggest wish was to erase the whole queer community from public life. He hated drug users and drug dealers, yet he smoked cannabis, grew cannabis and sold cannabis seeds. He hated trans people, yet he openly fantasized about being the other gender and being impregnated. Maybe Steve should have been more scared of the police, who killed him without any substantial repercussions. Maybe Steve should have been scared of the gun he held, which gave the police justification to kill him. Maybe fear itself was the biggest threat to Farmer Riggs. Fear makes people irrational. Fear makes people lash out. Fear isolates people. Now, Steve's daughter will grow up without a father. And for what? Maybe Steve had a mental disorder. Maybe he didn't. Either way, this kind of warped worldview isn't healthy. It also happens to be the current worldview of American conservatism, Christian nationalism. Steve got these ideas somewhere. He didn't exist in a vacuum. For everything he spoke about, you could find a Fox News story to match it. Steve was a true believer who followed his ideology to its logical conclusion: violence and self-destruction. I would like to close this out by reading part of an article written the day Farmer Riggs was killed by the police. A domestic dispute in Portage Lake that escalated into a day-long standoff Monday resulted in the death of a 29-year-old man, a fatally injured police canine, and a wounded sheriff's deputy, authorities said. Maine State Police and the Aroostook County Sheriff's Office responded to a home at 20 Ranger Street Monday morning following the report of a domestic altercation. Maine Department of Public Safety spokesperson Shannon Moss said Tuesday in a press release. A woman at the residence told authorities that Steve Regini had pushed her into a wall during an argument, and she wanted help to leave, according to Moss. When officers arrived, the woman was outside, but her 4-week-old infant was in the home with Regini, officials said. Troopers and deputies communicated with Regini through a window and by phone, persuading him to exit the residence, authorities reported. However, when officers attempted to take him into custody, Regini resisted, the release stated. A struggle ensued, and Regini pulled a firearm from his waistband and fired at officers as he retreated back into the residence, the officials said. As officers attempted to retreat from the driveway, Regini reportedly fired a second weapon, striking Aroostook County Deputy Shane Campbell in the shoulder, according to Moss. Deputy Reed Clark then returned fire, authorities said. Maine State Police negotiators engaged with Regini for several hours, urging him to surrender. Despite their efforts, the police said Regini attempted to flee the scene in a vehicle. Tactical team members disabled Regini's vehicle, prompting him to flee on foot, according to the police statement. Just before 8 p.m., Regini allegedly fired at a canine unit, fatally wounding the police dog, identified as Canine Preacher. He then pointed his firearm at troopers, police stated. Troopers Andrew Hardy and Jonathan Russell fired at Regini, who died at the scene, authorities reported. The infant was unharmed and was returned to her mother, police confirmed. Just before 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, Maine State Police posted on a social media that Canine Preacher, who was a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois, died in the line of duty. In a news release on the status of Canine Preacher, Moss stated, Canine Preacher was immediately rushed to an emergency veterinary clinic in Presque Isles, where he underwent surgery. Despite the efforts of veterinary staff, he succumbed to his injuries early this morning. He was surrounded by Sergeant Russell and several members of the tactical team when passed. Canine Preacher was more than just a working dog. He was a dedicated partner, a protector, and a hero. Maine State Police Colonel Ross said in a release, most people will never understand the sacrifices made by our canine teams, but last night, Preacher made the ultimate sacrifice to protect others from harm. Steve gave his life for his beliefs, while the police, who Trump believes deserves full immunity from use of deadly force in the line of duty, after firing into the home of a newborn child, then executing a young conservative father, offered no condolences to Steve's family, but instead left behind a single eulogy for a dog. Thank you for watching.